Hello, my name is Zachary Rice, and today I'll be talking to you about lock picking. Now, first, I want you to think about all the locks that you see in your daily life. There's a lot of them, right? And this is because, as a society, we value security, and locks can provide that security for us. Now, I think that to really understand security, you need to understand the devices that provide us with that security. You need to understand, how locks are made, how they function, ways to circumvent them, ways to manipulate them. And so today I'll be talking about a few things. I'll be talking about locks, specifically the pin and tumbler lock, which is probably the most common lock. So all the locks on your doors, your house, padlocks like this one. The majority of locks you're going to run into are going to be pin and tumbler locks. They're really common, so that's the one I'm going to talk about. And then I'm also going to talk about lock picks. So there's a few different types of lock picks. They do a bunch of different things. And so I'm going to talk about, when specifically to use certain lock picks, when to not use certain lock picks, and, different techniques for using these lock picks. And then I'm actually going to give a demonstration on how to pick a lock. Now, before we do this, we need to go over some rules. So there's a couple rules we need to follow. The first rule is you never pick a lock that you don't own. There's a couple reasons for this. The first one is because society there's like a stigma on lockpicking that, it's something criminals do, and so that's simply not the case. So we don't want to go around, picking locks that don't belong to us, because that's just going to kind of further that stereotype. And then, you just don't really want to mess with other people's stuff, because it's not really a nice thing to do. And, people aren't going to be very happy with you if they find you, picking their locks. And so the second rule is you never pick a lock that's in use. And this one's, more practical. That's just because locks can break when you pick them. And so, you don't want to, even if it's your lock, so you don't want to go and, pick the lock on your front door to practice and then break it and then, be out of lock on your front door and have to go buy one and install it. So it's kind of a pain. So, do you ever pick locks that are in use? And what I did is I just went to the store and I bought one of these padlocks. I bought a couple of these padlocks actually. So they're pretty cheap, and what you can do is you can buy like, 2 or 3 of them, and you can use them specifically for picking. That way if you break one or, something like that, then it's not a huge deal that, broke because you bought it specifically for that. And now let me show you what the inside of one of these locks looks like. This is a diagram of the inside of a pin tumbler lock. Now, if you look at the yellow section, that's what's called the plug of the lock, which is the actual part of the lock that moves. The green part is what's called the hull. It's the outer casing of the lock. And the gap between the two is called the shear line. Now, if you look, you'll see that there's 2 types of pins in every lock. There's the key pins and the driver pins. The key pins are the part of the lock that the key actually touches. And the driver pins push down on the key pins via the springs. And so how a lock opens is when the gaps between the driver pins and the key pins all line up with the shear line, the plug will turn and the lock will open. Now, if you look at this next diagram, this is a representation of what it looks like when you put the wrong key in a lock. Now, if you'll notice, the gap between the key pins and the driver pins don't match the shear line, and because of that, you won't be able to turn the plug, so you won't be able to unlock the lock. This last diagram shows what it looks like when you have the correct key in a lock. Notice that the gaps between the driver pins and the key pins all match the shear line. When this happens, you can turn the plug and the lock will open. So now we're going to talk about the different types of picks themselves. And so this is what a pick generally will look like. They can change and they can come in all different, sizes and flavors, but this is like a really simple metal one. So as you see, it's fairly thin. It's usually got a bigger end here to hold, and then it's got a really skinny small end where the actual pick is. And so this, if you can see it, is what's called a hook. And so see how the end of it's kind of hooked up? This is used mostly in pin and tumbler locks to manipulate individual pins, and allows you to push them up until what's called set, which is where they don't come down again. So next up we have what's called a diamond pick. Now, these are also used in pin and tumbler locks, but they're really especially useful in padlocks. And so what these have kind of like a triangular head, and what these do is, so if you set a pin, you really don't want to be messing with it very much anymore. And so what happens if you set a pin and then there's another pin behind it, sometimes you will unset the first pin by trying to get the other pin behind it. And so what this does is this allows you to reach around the pin that's already set, and it gives you a better angle for getting up at that other pin without messing with the pin you've already set. So those are very useful. And this is what's called a rake. Now these are interesting because there's really no specific way to make a rake, or specific types. Basically just whatever you find useful or find to have worked in the past. And so these can have a serpentine end, kind of like this. And what they do is you kind of rake them across the pins, and what will happen is they'll kind of move up and down in the keyway. And then eventually what can happen is all of them can hit the shear line around the same time, or they can all just set really quickly one after another. And then you can turn the plug, and then you can open the lock. So these are really good for if you can get really lucky and you can open a lock like really quickly with these. Or so this is always the first thing you want to use is a rake. But if it doesn't set the lock immediately, then you want to move on to something else. This is what's called a tension tool. Now I'm going to talk about this more whenever I actually pick the lock. But basically what you do is you put this in the keyway, and then you give it some torque, which is just rotational tension. And basically what happens is that'll allow you to set the pins, and then whenever all the pins are set, it'll allow you to rotate the plug and then open up the lock. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like whenever you actually pick a lock. Now first what you're going to need is the tension tool, which is this little tool that I showed you earlier. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take the little end of the tension tool and you're going to want to stick it in the bottom of the lock like so. And then if you you can put a finger on it and give it slight tension. Now the direction of the tension doesn't really matter that much, but sometimes if you're having difficulty picking a lock, you might want to change the direction of the tension and see if that helps. Now you need the pick. So I'm going to use just a simple hook pick. And so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to hold the pick like you would a pencil, and you're going to want to stick it in the lock right above the tension tool. Now if you kind of feel around in there by moving the pick up and down, you'll be able to feel where all the individual pins are. And so if you kind of move the pick up and down, you can kind of you can manipulate the pins, and you can set them. So we've got 2 set, there's 3, and then there's the 4th one. Now when you have it picked, you want to take your lock pick out, and then you want to turn the tension tool like so, turning the plug and opening the lock. Now let me show you what it looks like on the inside of a lock whenever you're picking it. This is what's called a cutaway lock. Now the purpose of a cutaway lock is to cut away the edge of the lock so you can see the inside of the lock. Now if you look on the bottom, you can see the key pins, and then resting on top of those you can see the driver pins, and then you can see the springs that push on the driver pins. Now with this lock, I will be able to pick the lock, and you will be able to see what the inside of the lock looks like while it's being picked. So first we're going to put in our tension tool like we did last time. And I'm just going to use just a regular hook pick. And so I'm going to insert the hook pick, and you can kind of see it pushing up on the individual tumblers. And so you kind of rotate it back to manipulate the individual tumblers like so. So the first pin set. Let's see. Second pin is almost there. Let me try that again. First pin set, second pin is set, third pin, or no, second pin's not set. Second pin set, third pin is set, and fourth pin is set. There we go. Okay, so then you rotate the lock, and it's unlocked. Now I'm going to have to warn you not all locks will pick in sequential order like this one. So this one, the pins will set from back to the front, but that doesn't happen in all locks. So usually you'll have to kind of feel around and, you know, figure out which pins are set and which ones aren't, and it's not really going to be in any type of particular order. So let's reset this lock real fast so we can watch this again. So you're going to put your tension tool back in like this. You're going to take your pick and you're going to start feeling with the tumblers. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, and there's 4. Almost. I got one stuck somewhere. And there we go, right there. And rotate to open. Now, I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I hope that it's been, you know, somewhat educational. I'm going to put some more sources in the information section of this video just so you can learn more about lock picking than the information that was contained in this video. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and happy picking!